Welcome to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. I'm Billy Keyserling, the man fortunate enough to be the mayor of his hometown, Beaufort. The purpose of this show, as my website, www.mayorbilly.com, and the newsletters I send out, is my effort to try to reach out to the people of Beaufort and the surrounding areas to help them understand some of the challenges and opportunities the city of Beaufort faces. Today I'm fortunate to have with me Jon Verity. Jon is the chairman of the City of Beaufort Redevelopment Commission, which is a partner with the City Council that has responsibility for planning, but more importantly even than planning is implementing strategies to help our small city grow. We started this process before I was mayor in 2008 when we contracted for a comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan said that a city of 12 to 13,000 people needs to grow if it's going to remain environmentally, culturally, and fiscally sustainable. Once we completed the plan, which was very different from other plans, not many new ideas, just a lot of old ideas that were sitting on bookshelves with the dust covering them. But once we finished the plan, we realized now, how do we get it done? And so while the city has for years had a redevelopment commission, City Council chose to remove all but one city councilman because City Council was dominated, and bring in people like Jon, who've got private sector experience, who are people who have adopted Beaufort, who love Beaufort, who have the best interest of our city growing. Jon, we're fortunate to have found a chairman who was head of citywide development in Dayton, Ohio, and also created the Arts District. So we were very fortunate to hand over the responsibility for redevelopment. But they too needed tools, so they enlisted with support from City Council, what is called the Office of Civic Investment, that's been doing some pretty extensive planning and implementing. Jon, do you want to sort of bring us up to date on?
Sure. Well, we couldn't do it without the City Council support, and certainly OCI has been, along with the consultants, has been a huge resource for us, because really our goal is to find a way to take the comprehensive plan that was approved by City Council in December of 2009, and as you said, implement it. And that has meant putting together a civic master plan that is focused on 5 different areas of the city. The first one probably being one of the key areas, our downtown area, which we define as the area along Boundary as well as along Bay Street. And then sectors 2 and 3, which are along Rebo Road, sectors 4 and 5, which are Boundary Street and Ladies Island. And you say, well, why do we need to do a civic plan around it? Well, we need to identify the areas where we have potential development. The plan says we want the city to be more walkable, more user-friendly. We want to increase the population so we can create more tax revenue. We want to make it more livable for the people that are here. But we need to focus on areas that, that give us a chance for success. And so the Civic Master Plan essentially identifies a lot of the vacant property or other areas within the city that have developable potential. Our first project, of course, was the old City Hall building, originally built as a post office, and I think for all intents and purposes one of our great successes, which is the now used by Low Country Produce as a food store and a restaurant. And we're certainly delighted with the way that's turned out. But there are lots of other possibilities, and so for us, finding these spots that we can really work on and put our arms around and get community feedback, involvement, and support for is really critical. So that's really what we're doing today. And so there's lots of activity. And I think people see that with Boundary Street and Bladen Street, which were city projects that were really in place before the Redevelopment Commission got started, but certainly add to the mix for us of places we can go.
Sure. When you look at your master plans, which are on the city website under the Redevelopment Commission and I think it's Office of Civic Investment, you'll see some rather unusual drawings. You'll see the west end of the parking lot with mixed use, retail, living above, you may see a hotel. It's all conceptual, because some people, when we were in this process, some people said, Billy, when's this going to happen? And I looked at them straight in the eye and said, when you make it happen. I said, the city can work, as we did on Bladen Street, on some of the horizontal improvements, the roads, the sidewalks, the trees, burying the utilities, but we can't go along and buy every piece of property and build these buildings. So we try to use a partnership where we can leverage grant dollars that the city is able to get, which is what did Bladen Street, with the private sector. And as we see now, we've got 16 new homes going up. You've got another building across the street from that the Black Chamber of Commerce is going to turn into an incubator for small businesses with some affordable apartments, and another number of other plans there. So this is a partnership, but we're very, very dependent upon Jon and members of the Redevelopment Commission sending their tentacles around the state, if not the region, if not the nation, to find the kinds of people who want to be in a place like Beaufort, understand the sensitivities of and the importance of our historic district, but also realize that to remain sustainable, we do have to grow.
Well, and I think it's clear to say that we don't have, the city doesn't have the money to develop all these projects. So it has to be a public-private partnership. We have to find people who see the value coming down the road for whatever area we go into. And I think that's always, well, it's certainly a challenge in our current economic situation, but I also believe that it takes a lot of time and planning. And what we have been doing is building up the potential for these projects and then searching for people who would like to participate. You know, you mentioned the downtown area, in particular the marina parking lot, the West End, and what a tremendous opportunity that is. It's a piece of property that's owned by the city, used mostly by cars today, or automobiles, not the ideal usage for waterfront property. And so I think it is certainly a huge opportunity for us to put something in that would really enhance the city of Beaufort. If you look at the old pictures of the waterfront before Waterfront Park was built, it's sort of staggering to see how much of an improvement it is to the quality of life for people in Beaufort. We'd hope the same kind of thing could happen in the west end of the parking lot. We certainly won't do that by ourselves. I think all successful projects require the participation of people in the community, public meetings, forums, the whole gamut of opportunities to get involvement is going to be key to making it successful. We want people to use it. We want people to be proud of it. We want it to fit into the Beaufort architecture and structure. So it's really that whole scenario is important, having all of the elements together.
It's sort of integrating, because if you're going to get rid of a parking lot, obviously we've got to find parking spaces.
Have to find a place for people to park.
So that's where your planning comes in, where you have to bring two property owners together, the city and someone who owns a space, so that becomes really one project, because they're so interrelated.
And I think that's obvious to the property owners, that there's some real advantages if we have a developer who wants to come in and partner with the city and with the people who are here and the organizations that are involved in the city. Then there's potential for everybody to win, and that's what we would hope to see. There's certainly space for downtown parking other than the parking facility we have, or the parking lot, but that'll take, we want to make sure that all is coordinated. We have found, and we have talked to developers both regionally and nationally, and there is some real interest in Beaufort and its downtown area. It's a city that has a national reputation for many different things. And so it's a place that people want to be and want to come, and we think there's lots of potential for these things to move forward. So we're very excited about it.
And we have a few more minutes before we have to take a break, but why don't you, for the audience, share a little bit about the members of the skills that your team bring to the...
Well, the wonderful thing is that we have this very diverse group of people who've largely retired here, people who've had experience in the kind of things we're doing. Mike McNally with development of housing areas up in New Jersey and elsewhere. There's just a lot of talent. Wendy Zara is on our board. She's had experience in both the public and private sector on the financial side. So there are others.
Keith, who comes from a
Keith Waldrop
housing and urban development background.
Housing and urban development in Georgia. So very, very
so we have
key people.
a strong redevelopment commission, and we have some partnerships. We've got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll talk about some of our partnerships and maybe a few more of the projects like Laudner Street.
It's a deal.
Welcome back to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. With me today I have Jon Verity, who is the chairman of the City Beaufort Redevelopment Commission. And we've been talking about how in 2009 the city passed a comprehensive plan. We've moved to a really block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood civic master plan. We've begun to identify opportunities. We're dependent upon the private sector to build the buildings and to do the development while the city as a partner. One of the things that people are very critical of, and in many cases rightfully so, is how many plans are you going to do? And there's some validity to that because there have been a lot of plans that have been sitting on shelves. I would argue that this plan is much more action-oriented. It has dollar signs by it. It has timelines by it. It has names and assignments of people and committees. It has partnerships. But I have to say that as a result of this planning, as a result of 2.5 years really of planning, through the penny sales tax for transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, the state government, and another federal agency, we are currently sitting on about $26 million of money. That's almost 2 years of City of Beaufort's budget for making some of these things happen. And it's because the Redevelopment Commission, supported aggressively by the City Council, has been able to foster some partnerships. Why don't we talk a little bit about the partnerships, and then we'll get to maybe a few more projects.
Sure. Part of our mission, of course, is housing-oriented, and we do work very closely with the Beaufort Housing Authority and the Low Country Housing Trust, which is actually headquartered in Charleston, but as a result of an investment made by both Beaufort and Port Royal, we now have a staff person here in Beaufort to look at ways to help finance the redevelopment of housing that's largely distressed. And I think that's an area that we're very interested in. The worst thing we can do is have essentially demolition by neglect. And we'd certainly like to think many of our old houses could be fixed up, and they have plans and ways to do that, and partners. The Beaufort Housing Authority, of course, takes care of many of the HUD-oriented projects, which are important to the city, and we work together on making sure that we're sort of working in the same areas if we can, geographically, so we can make an impact. Bladen Street is an example. When you put in sidewalks and street lights and parking, it makes people think about development and doing more in that area. Boundary Street, which is the primary project we'll be working on, not we, but the city really, the next couple of years. One of the unique things about that grant was its tri-modal aspect, meaning that the grant required bikeways, pathways, and a roadway. So as we look at the marsh area along Boundary Street, we'll not only have sidewalks along the roadway, but we're going to have boardwalks along the marshway. And I think that'll give people lots of options that are very important. But we also have to remember that planning is about visioning, and it is about trying to find ways to take the areas in our city that can either be developed or improved, and put a picture of what it might look like out there. I think a lot of people worry that those pictures are permanent, that somehow or other that's what we're saying has to be developed in that piece of property, and we're doing everything we can to let people know that it's just a way to fill the space with things that might work. But the property owner, remember, we're not talking about taking the property over. We're encouraging property owners to develop their property, and that we'd be happy to help them get through the regulatory issues, et cetera. Because in most cases, we don't own this property. We do own the downtown parking lot, but we don't own most of the property we're looking at. So it's very important for us to do that. Actually, that reminded me, there is one piece of property we're developing which is city-owned over on Lafayette Street, where we've taken a vacant piece of property that's owned by the city and went out for a request for proposal, and now have a very exciting plan to develop a couple of individual homes, a couple of duplexes that will fit very much into the neighborhood. There's also, the developer will put in streetscape, and there's going to be a little pocket park at the corner. So it's the kind of development we'd like to see owners do as well, that fit the neighborhood, fit the architecture, and create more places for people to live.
Some people have said, who know about this project, why are you going to give them the land? And I think there are two reasons. One is the infrastructure they're putting in is probably more valuable than the land. The streetlights bearing the cables, the pocket park, the sidewalks, the pervious driveways. If the city were to put that in, it's probably more expensive, and the developer's going to put that in. The second is it was an ideal property in a neighborhood that is trying to figure out how to grow, and that's Pigeon Point. You know, you have a lot of small houses on large lots, a lot of land that people might like to maximize. So for the city to take a piece of property that I haven't seen the appraisal, but maybe it's worth $50,000, build 6 houses that will go on the tax rolls, but also take care of its own needs in terms of the sidewalks, street lighting, and the infrastructure, and create a model. We don't own all that land. We can't give land to people. But we can invest in creating a model and for something that people can follow. So I think it's a pretty good investment.
Well, you know, I think we've learned in Midtown, off of Bladen Street, that if we do this right, if we put the right kind of infrastructure in, get the right kind of partner, that it can be extremely successful. I think we're up to 15 or 16 homes on the possibility of 22. They're only being built on contract, meaning they're not spec houses. So in just a period of 2 years, we have essentially 16 new homeowners in the downtown area. We think this can happen elsewhere. If you do the infrastructure right and you create the right environment and the right fit for the neighborhood, then it works, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the city.
One of the most interesting studies that was done in the context of the Civic Master Plan was the retail study, where it essentially said the city of Beaufort, or the downtown area, is over-retailed. We have too much retail for the number of people who live here.
Well, especially if you consider that either end of the corridor.
Either end of the corridor. So one of the focuses on housing, obviously, is to have more people who will be consuming. When we talked a little bit about redevelopment at the harbor, we talked about people who would be stopping here, would be going to the grocery store, be going to the pharmacy. We'll put those people in with that 16 new families who would like to be able to walk to the supermarket or to the drugstore.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Billy. There's no question. And frankly, you know, the sort of form follows substance here. We used to have grocery stores downtown and hardware stores because we had more people living there. The demand that's created when people live downtown or spend more time downtown will create the kind of stores that we want. And we have a good mix of restaurants and art stores downtown and others that have certainly been successful. But there's certainly room for more.
And a lot of people think, of course, of downtown as Bay Street. I think of downtown as the downtown I knew, which really ran from Rebo Road to Carteret Street and from Boundary Street all the way back, with
that's a good point.
4 grocery stores, corner markets, bike shops, lawnmower repair shops, gasoline stations, service stations as they used to be called, where you were a compact little city. And then, of course, the zoning and the ways and the automobiles and a lot took us away from that. The good news is that's what people want today.
Well, you know, it's exciting to see what's happening on Carteret Street. When you think about Breakwater and Wren and City Java and City Loft and the Low Country Produce Market and Griffith Market, you know, it's become a food corridor. It's just a wonderful thing to see, and we have the potential for further development up the street with the old Von Harten building, hopefully becoming a bakery. So as we see that movement up Carteret, and we see the university filling up the spaces around the campus, you know, we're connecting the dots. We're connecting the areas, but from downtown and Bay Street up to Boundary.
And what the city has had to do is work with parking. We're going to have some more parking spaces. We're going to have to do some more on-street parking. We're going to have to be sensitive about intrusion in the neighborhoods. And but a lot of people don't know this. I looked it up, and between the expansion of the university into the arts program and the businesses you mentioned, literally by the city addressing parking and slowing down traffic, we've seen somewhere between $6 and $8 million of private investment, just because basically your group, the Redevelopment Commission with the City Council, said this is an area to grow and we ought to help people grow.
Good
John,
thing.
I'm sorry, we've run out of time. This is something that you and I could probably talk about all day long. We'll have you back. But thank you for joining us for Straight Talk with Billy Kay. If you'd like to share your thoughts about this or any of our shows, you can email me, billyk@mayorbilly.com, or go to my website, www.mayorbilly.com. Thanks for joining us.